don't fucking know if I'm an engineer.
That's the intro to the show right there.
Josh, Ave Engineering, we're a machine shop. You would be a 5-axis multi-cutting high-precision milling machine with zero backlash for cutting cake.
Oh. Welcome to Engineer versus Designer.
Podcast.
We're product designers, engineers, machinists, masochists, and anybody who likes the feel of milled steel shavings on their face. My name is Josh, mechanical engineer of SolidSmack.com.
And my name is Adam, industrial designer of CADJunkie.com. Each week's show is broken into 3 halves. This week we'll be talking about high precision fabrication and extreme engineering. First, we'll serve up the top product design stories from this week's news, courtesy of SolidSmack.com.
Followed by design process tips, tricks, and Q&A compliments of CADJunkie.com.
And finally, we'll talk with maker, baker, and CNC rump shaker, our very special guest, Sky Greenawalt of School Street Design Company, specializing in custom composite tooling and fabrication for experimental aircraft. And writes about it at his blog, betterlivingthroughcnc.com.
Excellent. Sky, welcome. We're very pleased to have you with us today. In your opinion, how many licks does it actually take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Probably less than 10. I'm more of like a chomper, you know? I'm with that owl. A low number.
Thanks, Sky. Hold that thought. We'll be hearing more from you as the show goes on. Speaking of Tootsie Pops, Josh Mings of SolidSmack.com inject our hollow candy shells with the Tootsie Roll filling of knowledge. What have you got for us this week?
This week's Solid Smack update is brought to you with Solid Modeling Excitement by Siemens PLM and Solid Edge. Right now you can buy Solid Edge Classic and get a free upgrade to Solid Edge Premium. Wiring, piping, and simulation included. Go to solidedge.com and select free upgrade to get Solid Edge now. Well, we have just been hit with CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Plenty of cool make-related tech to look forward to, and much that isn't too far off. First, we've got Cubify.com and the Cube 3D printer from 3D Systems. This is excellent, folks. Not only is it a 3D print service and community, they also have a desktop 3D printer you and your kids can use at home. Ooh. The Cube printer rings in at $12.99, has a 5.5-inch cube build area, and the cartridges start at $50 a pop. Check it out at Cubify.com. So cool. I am certainly getting one.
I am definitely going to want to get them one of those myself. So Microsoft has announced that the Kinect, that Kinect is coming to Windows. Now, if you're not familiar with this, Kinect is that little thing that lets you interact with software using your hands or just about any part of your body that you like.
Yep.
Well, it came out for the Xbox, and it has seen countless hacks since then, and it is now coming to your PC February 1st. And has an open SDK. And if you've ever thought of mouse-free interaction with your CAD models, that is so going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine we're going to be seeing stuff like that very, very soon.
Yes, can't wait. Now, Geomagic software allows you to bring in scanned data and fix it up for your CAD software import. But what happens after that? Well, SpaceClaim and Geomagic have just announced a direct link to SpaceClaim from Geomagic. Now, you can make a shiny B rep via Geomagic and bring it directly into SpaceClaim to tweak away, which spells out one quick and easy process for dealing with that 3D data dump.
And how has making things changed over the years? How are more people creating than ever before? Those are just a couple of the questions that are delved into by Press Pause Play, which is a new documentary film from the House of Radon that takes a look at the digital revolution that's been unleashed upon the art world over the last decade.
Yes.
They interview some of the most prolific creators and show a lot of process along the way. Definitely worth a watch. It is over at presspauseplay.com. You can watch it for free, and man, it is so worth the time. All right, so Sky, if Microsoft were to come out with the Kinect for Windows in, say, a couple of weeks, what would you want to do with that?
Well, yeah, definitely it would be a pretty cool, somebody's going to turn it into like a 3D connection type device. The only problem that I have with that is that I always get motion sick. I use those things. I'm like the one guy, like I try to use it for like more than 15 minutes and then I just start feeling ill. But for those first 15 minutes, magic.
Are you an orthographic view kind of guy?
Not really, no. It's just a little, I don't know. God, I get a
little bit seasick. It just kind of floats around. Yeah.
And I like it. I really like it. It's just I can't use it more than like 15
I get seasick in this way that I really kind of like. It's actually a cool kind of seasickness. Really.
Manipulate CAD model, vomit on CAD model.
It's worth every keyboard.
The nice thing about this is you wouldn't need any device. You just use your hands and whatever else. So you're just moving it around. I don't know. I think this has been coming up for a long time. I mean, you've seen some of the hacks probably on YouTube where people are doing this, but I think the CAD companies are going to start getting into it very soon if they haven't already.
Yeah, and speaking of CAD companies getting into it, SpaceClaim and Geomagic, holy crap, that is a match made in heaven as far as I'm concerned.
Makes complete sense. I mean, it's going to be very easy, a much easier process after you get that into SpaceClaim.
So for those who don't know, I mean, basically what you're able to do now with this new SpaceClaim Geomagic link up is that, Geomagic works the way it always has. You scan your data, and then you're able to turn that into nice, clean, NURBSy surfaces, analytical geometry. And then you can click a button in Geomagic, it opens up in SpaceClaim, and then you can do your direct manipulations to the surfaces there, and then presumably hop back and forth.
Is the hop back and forth something that the kids are doing these days?
The hop back and forth, like hopscotch kind of thing? Because did that ever stop?
I'm sorry, the hop back and forth just sounds dirty.
I believe my neck vein has ruptured.
And that explains the cake-shaped blood spray pattern on the wall. We'll be right back.
Excellent.
Cake-shaped blood spray? What the hell is that?
That happens. I'm sure it does. Adam O'Hearn of CADjunkie.com. Your legs are strapped to a 5-axis milling machine. Wait, what? What are you doing? You're machining a King Warrior robot tattoo into your shins? That is awesome!
This week's CAD Junkie Q&A is brought to you by Siemens PLM and Solid Edge, offering a free upgrade to Solid Edge Premium with the purchase of Solid Edge Classic wiring, piping, and simulation included. Head over to solidedge.com and click free upgrade, people. Now today we are talking with Sky Greenawalt, high precision CNC aficionado for extreme engineering applications. So Sky, my little sister Olivia is one of the 6 people out there listening to the show right now, hopefully, and she is very little, not young, but physically diminutive, you understand. So anyway, in a couple of brief sentences, could you please explain to little Olivia what it is that you do?
I make stuff out of carbon fiber, basically, most of the time.
Okay.
And so I either do the design end of things or the fabrication end of things or the design and the fabrication end of things. That's really sort of where the ball got rolling for me.
Cool. So, okay, that's Olivia's version. Now, for us hardcore geeks, what do you do? And more importantly, what tools are you using to get the job done?
Okay, so the big, tool excitement on my end is about maybe 2 months ago, I got a Creaform Exascan 3D handheld laser scanner. Before that, I was using a Faro mechanical arm, and that was painful. So I take the Creaform, and then with the interface software that they have, that spits out an STL file. I bring that STL into Rhino, and then I either use standard Rhino NURBS commands or the T-splines retopologizing snaps to rebuild the surfaces in Rhino. And then I use a plugin called MadCam that runs inside of Rhino to generate the tool paths, spit those tool paths out, and then a partner of mine has a nice big 3-axis mill that we directly machine molds on, and from those molds I make parts, and from that point it's lather, rinse, repeat. Just keep turning.
So I have a really silly, kind of embarrassing designer question for you. You talk about designing for composite materials, and you've mentioned carbon fiber being one of those. For the rest of us posers out there that use the term to sound smart but don't really know what a composite material actually is, could you explain what composites are and why they're important? Well,
composites are the joining of 2 dissimilar materials to make a final material that's stronger than either of the 2 independently. So you could even look at like plywood as a composite material. It's the joining of wood and glue. Carbon fiber, it's sexy and hot, and everybody thinks it's really exciting. When you get down to it, it's really glue and fabric. That's all it is. It's glue. Fabric. But it's fun stuff to work with, and it looks really sexy, and people love it. And of course, it's strong and light and has some wonderful properties to it.
Okay, so you were just telling us about this cool new project you've got going on with a guitar maker, and you've basically been asked, well, what did they ask you to do?
Well, so Santa Cruz Guitar recently had one of their lead carvers leave the company after like 12 years or something. And they had a lot of worries about how they would, going forward, produce the type of works that this person was making, especially in like the custom carved necks. They make a bunch of different guitar necks. And they were previously trying to digitize these necks with a microscribe and rebuild the surfaces in Mastercam, and not having too much success with that. And so sort of like a week or two after I got the laser scanner, they just sort of fell into my lap and said, hey, we've got, we need to digitize these necks and we need to have them rebuilt. Maybe you'll have more luck than we've had at rebuilding these things. And so we went over and they've got this really nice vacuum jig fixture that they hold the necks in. And we were able to make some really nice template files so that we could quickly and efficiently scan these necks and get them lined up in their CAD system and my CAD system. And so I've been helping them to take that scan data and make really perfected production ready NURBS models of those necks so that they can, going forward, have these things as production ready pieces.
Fantastic. So basically, you're taking your scan data, sending it out as an STL over to Rhino, retopologizing it using probably a combination of Rhino surfacing tools, like you said before, maybe some T-splines, maybe some regular Rhino surfaces, traditional NURB surfaces, and then giving those back to them for use as manufacturing data. Is that
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So they're doing the toolpath generation in this case, and so I just hand off to them a NURB surface, and it's been really, really cool. And I've learned a ton about guitars, which is great. and it smells amazing over there. Like every time you go in there, it's like they've got all this like rosewood, and there's all these amazing woods, and you just
sounds amazing. What's the most technically challenging part of that process?
I think the hardest thing really is, and this is, what all reverse engineering boils down to, is discerning between what is noise and what's design intent. And especially when you're talking about things that are hand carved, and really trying to capture what it is that makes that neck, and figuring out, what's the stuff that, well, it might appear in this one, but the customer says like, well, that's actually kind of an aberration. That's not how these normally go. And so, a lot of these things, especially in the instrument world, have so much to do with feel, right?
Right.
And really subtle curvature differences can really change how the product feels to the customer in this. And I totally understand that. And so really discerning, what it is that's the essence of this neck without losing the intent of it, that's the hardest part.
That is pretty amazing. And based on this discussion, I'm going to have no choice but to conclude that I'm kind of a failure at life, really.
Feeling a little inadequate there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I start to feel a little inadequate.
Oh, here comes the waterworks. We'll be right back. For the love, use a tissue at least. Come on. All right, and welcome back. Today we're chatting with Skye Greenawalt, owner of School Street Designs, who specializes in custom prototype tooling and production of composite structures for home-built and experimental aircraft.
He also bakes a mean cake, and while we're pretty big on custom design and fabrication here at EvD, we are also big fans of delectable baked goods.
But let's be frank, this guy is using robots and friggin' lasers to make airplanes.
I don't think it gets any cooler than that.
So Skye, you started out with balsa wood, right?
As a kid, I built a lot of balsa models, old timers, antiques, which are all like pre-World War II designs, and competed with them, like in terms of endurance competitions. And then it took about 15 years off from that, and I decided that I wanted to build an airplane again. And at the same time, I got this bug in me that I wanted to learn CAD. And I'd always sort of wanted to learn CAD. I actually started as a mechanical engineer and then just kind of drifted over to the physics building when I was in college. And so my interest in CAD and my interest in building model airplanes like really quickly merged when I realized that I could, take some of these old plan sets that I had and I could trace them and I could send them off to some guy in Iowa. And, 4 days later, this perfectly cut balsa wood would show up on my doorstep. And that was like, the novelty that never got old for me. It was so cool.
That's super cool. I mean, so how did that lead to School Street Design? How did School Street start?
Well, so I guess there's a couple more intermediate stops along the way. I ended up running my own kit company, which I called Acme Aircraft Company, and sold these scale model airplane balsa models, out of my bedroom, basically over the internet, and learned a lot when I realized that, this was a wonderful, fun thing, but made absolutely no money. I decided to try and make,
kind of like EvD.
Yeah. And then I ran into my friend Dana, who had this big mill. Dana had gotten this mill from this fellow down south named John Lynch, who had designed it. And John had blown out the electronics on this mill, and the computer was all blown up, and the control boards were all blown up. And he basically said, like, you can have this mill, but I'm not going to help you get this thing running. I don't have the time to do it, but just take it off my hands, get it out of here. It was either that or the scrapyard for this thing. And so he ran into me and he was like, hey, do you know anything about 3-axis milling? And I was like, well, I've got a laser cutter. That's at least like, yeah, I sort of understand some of the basics. And so he and I, spent a couple of years kind of like dialing this mill in and putting in new electronics and rewiring it and, learning the software and basically teaching ourselves how to run this thing. And then really like what the project that I've been working on most for my own business the past couple of years is on this method of directly machining medium density foams and finding ways of very quickly putting those molds into production without any sort of secondary hand finishing. And I found, this method, I've come up with this process of temporarily sealing that foam so that I can instantly turn it into a mold that is reusable.
So School Street, I mean, it's a service design house for custom aircraft, but really, it's a whole lot more than that. And it seems like you're kind of using it as a test bed for experimenting with the latest technology you can get a hold of.
Yeah, right? I think that part of what made me really excited when I was designing model airplanes and with the advent of CNC laser cutting as this sort of like commodity was the fact that all these people that I knew and were friends with started designing their own airplanes and started dabbling in CAD. And because the price point was right, and because the method of production was there, like all these people that had previously just been builders before were turning themselves into designers. And that to me was like really, really cool. And so like a lot of what I do with School Street, like a lot of what gets me excited is in finding these like lower cost production methods, so that you can enable these people who have just been, consumers in the past into becoming designers and to create lower cost ways of manufacturing prototypes and of making your stuff.
So you have a bit of a DIY ethic here, and one side to making, using these DIY or open source laser scanners and printers is that it's making fabrication way more accessible. How are you involved in that, and people who are looking and interested in this, what should they explore?
I mean, I think that like the sub $1,000 modeling software, specifically Rhino, that there's so much value now in that. Like I understand why for some people like $1,000 is a lot to spend on software. But if this is like even if you're a serious hobbyist, that's probably an acceptable price point. And one of the things, I haven't played around with it yet, but the new Autodesk, like the 123D, where you can take photographs and capture them and turn them into mesh objects. Have you guys played around with that at all?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, things like that, like just blow my mind in terms of the amount of power that you're handing over for free to the general public. I mean, stuff like that is just beyond cool.
So do you always rely on digital data, or are there parts of the process where you still think it's best to stick with good old pencil, paper, patterns, and glue?
No, this whole thing that I've created is like one giant crib to keep me from having to draw. Like, I mean, I can't read my own handwriting half the time, I couldn't do this if I had to do this by hand. Let me put it that way.
We've got to talk about baking a little bit, Sky. You love to bake, right? What got you interested in becoming the master of the ingredient list?
So, like baking is one of those things where like it's quasi magical. The sum is greater than the parts. And so it's really fun, and frankly people always think it's impressive when you show up at like a party or something with like some great home baked good. And what's funny to me is like whenever I bake, I'm always struck by how much overlap there is between what you do as a baker and what you do when you're doing composite fabrication, like when you're doing like carbon fiber work. And I would say that you could probably take any good baker and turn them into a composite fabricator, and you could probably take any composite fabricator and turn them into a baker.
Honestly, have you ever tried to machine a cake or a cake mold?
Machining a cake is actually like not the worst idea other than the contamination, because the problem that I have with my oven is that it's slightly tilted, and so the tops of my cakes are always tilted, and I'm trying to level them. So the idea of machining the tops of my cakes level, that's a feeling. That's totally feeling.
Well, I'm drooling all over myself, I'm afraid. Sky, having you on the show has been even better than that time I transformed my hands into baked ziti, dipped them in cheese, and ate them. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been fun.
Or maybe that was a dream. I don't know.
Pretty sure it was, buddy. If you would like to send your favorite cookie recipe or a real cookie, double chocolate, please, to EvD HQ. Address them to only Josh.
And if you would like to send buckets of cooking lard and butter scoops to EvD, address those to Josh's love handles.
Yes.
Engineer vs. Designer appreciates your comments. If you listen to the show and wish you could squeeze lemons into our eye holes, head over to engineervsdesigner.com and squeeze
And
away.
if you want to see us burn the biscuits and yell at each other, be sure to like us, plus one us, tweet us, or whatever else, as social media has been known to cause distractions and high-pitched screaming.
Our theme music is by Ross Hartman.
We'll see you next week, and remember, without engineers, designers would snort lemon drops through a rainbow straw.
And without designers, engineers would snort greased machine shavings through a meat pipe.
Spicy.
Yummy.
Right on.
Okay, now let's do it for real.